Good afternoon. Sorry, behind the scenes, you won't have realised that Hoda and I had just had some last-minute technical issues. But welcome, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. And hello, welcome back to Agents of Calm. This is episode 5. I've been busy with a few small things like moving countries and moving house and basically moving life, which means I haven't been able to show up doing this for a while now. But I am delighted and thrilled to be back with the wonderful Hoda this afternoon. Hoda, thank you very much for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here, Christian. Thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. Hoda is a self-concept coach, and we have met. We're a part of an online community, and by having a look and chatting and understanding what Hoda does and her work, it's become apparent to me that not only do we share a lot of values and aspirations for ourselves and our clients in the world, but also when it comes to Agents of Calm and those 3 pillars of what I like to see as living as an agent of calm, which is all around raised clarity, balance, and consciousness. There's a lot of overlap. So I'm really excited to talk to Hoda today. Sorry about the technical glitches, my dear. No one likes to go into one of these things. Welcome. So I kind of buck tradition a little bit. I know it's sort of podcast 101 to introduce the guest and give them their, offer listeners backstory and things. But I'll kind of like, given your incredible backstory and your and what's brought you to today, I'd invite you to sort of share your journey and what's brought you to doing the work you're doing today.
Okay, sure. So, Christian, again, I'm just going to make mention of what a delight it is for me to be here. Never mind the technical issues. That's everybody. I think we're all pretty much in the same boat with that. So all good. About me and my journey and what has brought me to this wonderful place of becoming a coach, a self-concept coach in particular. I believe that I have been through a great deal of trauma in my life. And I've had a very turbulent life in order to be trained to empathize with, understand, be patient with, believe in others who need that love, support, compassion, and understanding on their journeys to becoming their very best selves and blooming into what they're meant to be, to play their part and give their service to the world. So it has been my honor and privilege to go through a great deal of trauma.
Honor and a privilege.
Yeah. I grew up.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to ask about where your journey, because you've been all over the world, haven't you?
Well, I guess you could say both the East and the West. I was born in Shiraz. Everybody knows Shiraz wine, but they don't know the city Shiraz. Shiraz wine actually comes from that city. Shiraz is in Iran. Yeah. And the wine vats were taken to Italy apparently after the revolution. But when I was...
I know that. Okay.
Yeah, it still exists. Shiraz wine. Yeah. That's still, it's good stuff, and it still exists, and the wine is still made in Italy apparently. But I was 7 years old when we were taken to Canada with my whole family, and I grew up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, which is right in the middle of, like on the map, it's right in the middle between Toronto and Vancouver. And well, I grew up with a great many set of wonderful values. I went to school there, and one of the greatest values I remember growing up with was you can do anything you can set your mind to. And then I was taken to Iran when I was a teenager at age 15, and I went through a very prolonged culture shock. So I lived in a bubble for about 12 years, trying to preserve those values, the language that I felt comfortable in, which was English. And I was in full rebellion. And it wasn't just culture shock. It was that right before moving to Iran, I converted to Christianity. and went to Iran as a converted Christian to a Muslim country. And this for a teenager was just like beyond imaginably shocking in so many different ways. And I learned a great deal. I became a teacher at age 16. 1 year into our move, I quickly became a teacher because that was a wonderful place for me to be myself and teach what I knew, which was English, and be myself in that language. So it was a place of refuge for me. And I spent the next 17 and a half years teaching and training candidates for higher examinations and coaching candidates for confidence. I lived then in Izmir for a year, Izmir, Turkey. And then I moved to Berlin, Germany, to be close to family, and became a full-time coach, full-time self-concept coach. So that's my journey in a nutshell.
Right. Okay. Wow. So what, if I may, what inspired the the change in religion? Was there anything specific that encouraged that, or was it just a personal choice? Were you, I guess another way of putting it was, were you moving towards something or and away from something else?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What I had been raised with was one thing, and then there was, I actually, how it happened was I went to camp, a Christian camp, and the contrast was immense. And that contrast hit me so hard and had me very much moved. And I loved the idea of love. I loved the idea of this unconditional love from somewhere. So then it was in my mind, this father image, this God, the Father, which later on in my developmental years as a teenager developed a great deal and changed. But as a young teenager, this was very, very enticing. Yeah. And it was a moving away for sure from laws and rules that just didn't make sense to my fast growing modern mind. So it was a place of refuge. Christianity for me was these wings I felt sheltered by. And it came, even though I went through a great deal of trauma at the hands of the underground churches in Iran later on, it also became, at the same time, looking back, a real true place of faith and refuge for my own growth and development, and really kept me sane. Really kept me sane in those years of complete loneliness in Iran.
Yeah. Gosh, I bet it's an extraordinary journey. I read on your website a lovely quote, something along the lines of, "You are the only instrument you need for your happiness and success." And obviously, being with clarity, I'm a huge advocate for clarity, and it's one of the most important things that I learned through my journey, and when I started to understand the power and the value of calm and how important clarity is to finding that place of inner calm. So on that basis, can we sort of get a little bit more into your work and actually what you do and what your coaching focuses on, and also how that journey has inspired the work that you do?
Sure. So when it comes to clarity, I think that one of the greatest things on my own journey has been gaining clarity on who I am, where I come from, and what I want to be and what I want to become and how I want my life to look like. And I think gaining clarity around that is so important for all of us, especially if there's any level of difficulty during childhood, any level of difficulty. The thing is that a lot of people, Christian, I find throughout my years of working with people, is as soon as you say the word trauma, they go into this resistance. No, I don't come from trauma. I had a wonderful childhood. Whereas we don't realize that trauma doesn't have to be this horrible accident that happens to us, or violence during our childhood. Trauma could be as simple as your bubbles being burst as a child by mom and dad not paying enough attention to your artwork, to your creativity, to your whatever it was that you were excited about, and they just didn't share the same level of excitement. That could be traumatic. So these are little things that happen in our developmental age that cause us to lose touch with clarity as we become adults, and we find ourselves lost in this climb up a ladder, and things that have been set out for us to do, like find the right job, get married, have children, step 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can lose touch with clarity, with what it is that we really want in our lives and how to get there. So what I do is I help my clients to gain clarity around what it was in the past that caused them to lose touch, and then clearing away of that, those blockages, those limiting beliefs that were created during childhood. So the way that I do this is I have 2 powerful tools that are very simple: journaling and meditation, and guided meditation / hypnosis. And a lot of clarity can be gained through these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said about trauma, because you're so right. I think we live in a society today where the word trauma, immediately we go to a deeply harrowing experience, and we don't need to define what that is. That's not about that. Where you're right. I mean, in my work, because I also coaching as well, but part of my coaching is hypnotherapy as well, something called RTT, rapid transformational therapy. And whenever I'm talking to clients, I like to create the analogy of whatever dents your self-image. So we're born into the world with a perfect self-image, limitless power, limitless potential, limitless self-esteem. Anything that dents or cracks that self-image is trauma, as far as I'm concerned, because it's like you said, it starts to take you away from that sense of freedom and that sense of authenticity, and into a state of sort of confused obligation, which is where most adults live, because you come into that world and you've got to get the right job, you've got to get married, have children, toe the line and thing. But really, like you said, a trauma can be as little as your a pretty girl or a pretty boy laughing at you on the stage on a school play at the age of 5. I mean, to a 5-year-old, that is just what happened to me. It's just awful. And if you don't resolve that, and get clarity on that and process that and see it for what it is, that can pop and burst and really sort of take you down later on in life, because you have the same reaction as you do as a 5-year-old. So yeah, I concur with you. So going back to the 2 tools that you use, the journaling and the meditation, I love the fact that you grounded those in simplicity, because a lot of self-development and coaching and therapy work can be very, very simple. I mean, there are obviously lots of different techniques. So is there any particular type of journaling that you like to teach and coach, or is it just free writing, or do you guide your clients in terms of how to capture their thoughts and process them?
Oh, I do guide the journaling. I do guide it. So I have these programs, these transformational programs, where I take them with baby steps through what questions to answer and when. So everything there is a lot of free writing as well, but there are very particular questions based on the lesson that they're going through, that I ask them to, pause now and go into thought. Do the diaphragmatic breathing that I love, that I think is very important before getting anything important done, to breathe, and then start answering the question as fully and intently as possible.
So do you work off templates, or do you customize the questions based on your client and where they need to sort of evaluate and where they need to think and the things that they're trying to transform?
Oh, that's a good question. If it's a one-on-one session where I'm going to ask the client to do some journaling, it will definitely be inspired in the moment based on what's happening
Okay.
in the session. Yeah, and what the client is finding him or herself saying. But for the programs that I've created, they're fixed. Like it's a step 1, step 2, step 3 format. Yeah.
Okay. Lovely. And are they just within your coaching work, or do you make them available to people? Do you have any kind of things that, sort of downloadable tools, or is it just something that you keep in the coaching relationship?
I do have a private Facebook group where I do post content, questions for journaling and guided meditations as well.
Okay.
But outside of that, I don't have any of my journaling questions. Perhaps I should create a couple of journaling questions, to share with the world as well. That's a good idea, Christian. Thanks.
No, I'd love to get them. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've been doing I call it a challenge. It's not really a challenge, but I kind of spontaneously offered to share my own self-evaluation template that I've used for many, many years and I've curated over the years. And I kind of couched it as a challenge just because I think what's interesting to me is that you and I do this work and we think about this all the time. And I think sometimes I personally can sometimes fall into the trap with assuming that, of course other people do it as well. But actually the truth is they don't, because, people are so, especially now with so much chaos outside, people are so focused on just surviving and getting through from one day to the next that they're actually not thinking about, that kind of self-care and that self-nurturing and nourishing work that they need to be doing. So I'm always interested in, obviously, our role as coaches fundamentally, isn't it? It's the power of great questions, and just finding that one question at the right time that just cracks the egg, because the answer is already there. It's just finding a guide for that to come through. Let's talk about balance, which is obviously the second pillar. There's a lots of work being worked, talk and stuff being shared around bringing greater life balance. And I think one of the positives that's come out of this pandemic is people have not been forced, but have naturally found the opportunity to bring greater balance to their life because they're at home more, they're spending more time with the kids. And if you look at the kind of typical coaching wheel that a lot of people use, I personally don't, but a lot of people do, we've naturally found ourselves improving in the areas where it was all like, working 16, sort of 12, 13 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's changed now. But particularly I love your work around balancing the kind of the Jungian philosophy of balancing feminine and masculine energies. And I think that's a lot, we find a lot of that in, is it Falva, which is the name of your actual practice and your idea. So how does that land for you, and how does that land in the work that you do with people, that whole aspect around balancing energies?
Okay, so the reason why I founded Falva, which is a combination of phallus and vulva, representing the inner masculine and feminine energies within all of us. So Falva.
I did Google the name and I couldn't find anything, so I thought it was like that. Really intelligent. I've got you.
Yeah, it's coined. Yeah. And so which makes my work harder, because I have to explain this. Like, this is the sweet spot of balance between the masculine and feminine energies. And one of the main reasons why I was inspired to create this and have my coaching go around this is, first and foremost, one of my biggest influences is Dr. Carl Gustav Jung. That's where my own self-psychoanalysis and my own self-therapy and healing began. It was with Jung. Who talks a great deal about the anima and animus, or the feminine and masculine energies within us, and that we're constantly moving toward balance. So balance has been a key part of my life. I've always observed and noticed that everything is moving toward, there's a momentum toward balance, whether it's in climate, in our consumption, in our in equality between the genders, and more importantly, all of these things are happening in the outside world as a result of the balance that we're trying to achieve in our inner worlds.
Mm,
So every single one of us human beings as individuals is constantly striving toward balance.
mm,
Whether or not we listen to it is a different question. But the nature, what I find, what I'm observing in my life, and what I find in my own self-observation and introspection is we're constantly uh, in need of balance. And every time we fall out of balance, we feel it, and
mm,
we need to pick up tools to come back into balance. And
mm,
feminine and masculine energies in particular, because in my life, going from the West to the East, back to the West, I've noticed a great deal of imbalance
mm,
both in the West and the East. But for me, in the East, in my experience of the Middle East, this was just it was like a brick in my face. How much of a chasm there is between the feminine and the masculine, and what dire consequences it brings along with it. And I found that we are all, in fact, the beautiful thing about it is that we all notice this and we all want to arrive at this place of balance. So
mm,
when I say balance in terms of feminine and masculine energies, I believe that we all are here for a purpose, a
mm,
higher purpose,
mm,
a
mm.
calling, something to
Yeah.
serve humanity with, to leave a mark with, and contribute to human expansion and consciousness. And the ideal, there is no such thing as ideal, but optimal momentum to that purpose that we are here to serve is found in a place where you feel that you are both inspired and creative,
Mm,
and you're getting the work done to move that inspiration into tangible reality. And the inspiration and the creativity is the feminine energy. It's being tapped into that and
mm,
tapped into your emotions. And the momentum and action taking is the masculine energy and being tapped into that. And I
mm,
found that in the Middle East, for instance, most families, most family structures, traditional structures, the female is not tapped into the masculine energy enough to pursue her dreams. And the male specimen is very much out of touch with the feminine energy, and you find that there's a lot of conflict in both the men and the women because of this.
mm,
So this stops both of them from fulfilling their
mm,
higher calling, that purpose that they want to fulfill. And it has nothing to do with uh, a person on the outside. We're not talking about a relationship on the other. We're focused on the relationship with the self.
mm,
So for me, it's my relationship with my masculine energy and how
mm,
healthy that is. And that manifests on the outside with my
mm.
relationship with the men in my world.
Interesting. And so, why do you think we find ourselves so out of balance, generally speaking? Why do you think there is such a degree of imbalance right now? Why is this work necessary? Do you think, I mean, through your work, is there a pattern forming in terms of the journeys that your clients have taken to find themselves so out of balance with these two, with the two sides of this energy?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not going to go too philosophically into it. I'm going to keep it simple, and that is not being in alignment with love, with self-love. That's being
Mm,
out of balance. Like in
okay.
one word, it's just being out of touch with love.
Mm,
And a lot of people that I find you speak to wince at the word love and self-love,
mm,
interestingly enough,
mm,
because of all of the uh, traumas that have not been dealt with, which leads to a lot of layers of protection, self-protection.
mm,
So the deeper the frown, the more hunched the back is, and the
mm,
more this hand in the face of people saying, "Don't get anywhere near me,"
mm,
the more that person is trying to protect themselves from the pain of deficiency of love. And that is being out of balance. To me, that's the greatest definition of it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think, I mean, I sent you the Agents of Calm, the song, and that spoken word over music that I produced a while back. And one of the line in there that really sits at the center of that is that you know, the only way to navigate these times is to follow our hearts, is to find our hearts again. And sometimes I talk to people about that, and depending on where they are on their journey, to your point, they'll either get these very strange looks like, what do you mean follow the heart, find the heart? They just literally they reject it at the level of theme, whereas the other end of the spectrum, people sort of melt, and the insight that gives them immediately just sort of hits them, you know, in the throat, and they get it. So you're right, it is interesting, isn't it, how we've sort of developed this strange relationship with the concept of love, you know, and it's a very, despite being sort of hugely unifying, it's quite a divisive subject. You know,
Yes.
so you've kind of answered my next question is for people listening to this, either now or kind of when it goes up onto the podcast, what advice or what tips can you offer to people should someone want to start to do a little bit of self-inquiry to explore whether they are out of balance, and more importantly, if they're not ready to work with somebody like you, what kind of things can they start to do to bring that balance back?
All right. So I would say buy yourself a nice pen and a nice notebook that you can get excited about to start journaling, and start answering a couple of questions. One would be on a fresh page, answer this question.
I'm going to do this right now. Go.
Okay. All right. So on the very top of the page, write woman or female or feminine. And then after setting the intention to write everything that is in your unconscious mind that revolves around these words, breathe in deep. And as you breathe out, begin to just write single words that you come up with around these words. Female, feminine, woman. What are all the words that come to your mind? Write it all around. Brainstorm. Once you're done with that, so that there's a lot of analysis that can be done with that. You can, on your own, you can start to find patterns. If there are any pictures, like for example, I've had clients say stream, brook, spring of water, wind. The images are very interesting, and we need to pay attention. We need to heed these images and symbols, and you can start Googling it. You can have fun with it. Like, what does the wind stand for in literature as a symbol? I do the same thing with male, masculine, man. What are the images? Like if like a client of mine had words like iron and aggression, and this is not balanced. This is not in line with love. Masculine does not necessarily mean aggression. This is just an out of balance belief that has been formed by all the different elements that create concepts and schemas in our minds while we are growing up, right? So it could be due to trauma. It could be due to I don't know, war movies. It could be generational trauma. You know, there are so many things that create these beliefs in our minds. Whereas the masculine energy it optimally would be encouragement, support, care, beckoning. You know, these are the words that we want to slowly feel automatically flow out of our pen. But don't censor it, don't force it. Allow everything to be written and explore it with a curious and open mind, and continue this on a regular basis.
Okay. And so I get it. So really what we're doing is we're just kind of revealing our deep inner sort of subconscious response and understanding to those two sides of, you know, the man. And what so say for example, things come up for me. I obviously haven't done this yet, but I will. Things come up to me and I do some analysis and there is obviously some imbalance. What are some sort of 3 basic things that I can start to do, as well as the inquiry itself? I mean, I'm a big believer in sort of awareness is 80% of change. Just being aware of that is hugely transformative in its own right, because I can then take the action. But are there kind of 3 things that I can start to do to sort of readdress that balance?
Okay, so it depends on where you feel you need to address the balance. So is the feminine energy more out of balance, or I mean, if one is out of balance, the other one is as well. But I mean, that makes sense. But is it that I want to bring my masculine energy more into play, or my feminine energy? That's a very important question. So do you have an answer for
that? Let's just assume that I need to bring more of my feminine energy into play.
Okay. So these would be, I would say, because mind, body, and mind, body, spirit are interconnected, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always like to say one of the pillars of my work is brain, body, bomb. I always say you were brain, body, bomb, baby. So you are mind, body, spirit, and they're interconnected. Yeah. So whichever one you work on, you're also working on the other one. Which is the easiest go-to? It's the physical realm. It's the 5 senses, your body. So get into action. So what can I do physically, actually, to polish my feminine energy? The number one thing that really gets us tapped into the feminine energy is to listen to binaural beats with very soft music and meditate along to it with earphones.
Okay.
Especially at a certain hour during the 24 hours that you have every day, which is not during the day, but late into the night or very, very, very early in the morning. So at the crack of dawn, 4 or 5 a.m. before anybody else has woken up in your family. Turn on some candles, listen to really soft music, and sit there and meditate. I highly recommend guided meditations as well, meditations that take you into self-inquiry. There are amazing courses on Insight Timer. Insight Timer is a meditation app that I recommend to anyone and everyone that I come in contact with.
I've heard of that. Yes, great recommendation. What's that called? Insight Timer. Okay.
Insight Timer. Yeah. Some great teachers there. I highly recommend one particular teacher called David G. He knows.
Yeah. Okay. I'll pop that into the comments. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. That's great. And the reason that's even very timely is on Wednesdays, I'm going to start sharing within the Agents of Calm group a highly recommended meditation. So I will recommend, so if you've got any specific meditation that David G does, let me know afterwards and I'll pop that in the group on Wednesday.
Sure.
Right. I'm leading up to hopefully doing live meditations as well. I know that it's becoming a bit of a thing, which is quite interesting. There's people meditating, crowd meditations via Zoom and Facebook Live, which is interesting. Amazing. Thanks for that. Thank you for being so generous with because I know some of that is your actual work, and but that's really interesting, and I'll certainly do some introspection around that later. You did a Facebook Live recently, which I just loved, all around the inner trasher. Okay. which is a really sort of topical thing for me. Within the RTT work, one of the major parts of the process, once that we've done the therapy, is working with the inner child and kind of repraising and bringing the inner child into our work. And again, the whole concept of our inner team, our inner child, this means different things to people depending on where they are on their journey. But I think for me, I'm of the opinion it's one of the most universal techniques that we can use. And I think when, regardless of the most ardent naysayer, if you can just break through that initial resistance, I don't know anybody that hasn't had a very moving response when they start to do inner child work. So I'd love, particularly, especially that awareness and insight, so far as pushing up, this is about consciousness. The more that we can do the inner work, the more that we can raise our consciousness and expand that. So can you tell us a little bit more about the inner trasher and where that falls within your work and where you apply it? And again, if you don't mind, anything that people watching this might be able to do?
Yeah, so thank you for touching upon that, because I think that this is one of the most important things to become aware of for every single bipedal animal on this earth, aka human beings. I love that you say that this is something that you've never met anyone maybe perhaps have initial resistance toward, but really be moved once that initial resistance is taken out of the way. Same here. I've never met anyone who didn't say, yeah, I definitely feel that I have that voice of the trasher in me. So the trasher, I always explain it this way. I say, is there somebody, a voice, a part of you that in certain experiences, even though that experience could be a very sublime, a wonderful experience, you might be on vacation, it crosses its arms and it looks away and pouts and starts saying it's too hot or it's too cold or I'm hungry or I don't like this situation. Why is it cloudy 2 days in a row? Why is it like so and why is it like so? Basically trashing your experience of life in that moment. So everybody without exception says, yeah, I definitely have that. Yeah. There's a part of me that likes to pout and look away and complain. So we all have that inner trasher, but the beauty of the inner trasher is that it is a part of us that was originally a creator. It wants to be a creator. It is on our side. It wants to lovingly give us that feminine energy of inspiration and creativity and play and curiosity and playfulness. But because of those traumas, whether hugely impactful or subtle, it doesn't matter. Because of those little traumas during our developmental years, the creator began to protect itself and morphed and turned into the inner trasher. And we become used to the inner trasher. We become used to crossing our arms and complaining and trashing our experiences. Yeah. But we need to, the point of coaching, I think what we all do as colleagues in a way is we help people to constantly re-tap into the creator to understand that it's a trasher right now and go back into the creator mode. And the best thing to do is to become mindful of this, that this happens, that oh my goodness, I'm in my trasher mode right now. How can I go back into creator mode? Just becoming aware of this and using your simple tool of writing it down. So I always say, catch yourself red-handed. Oh, right now I'm in trasher mode. Write it down. I feel dissatisfied. I want to complain. I feel like I want to pout and I want to hit someone. Write it down. It's okay. Don't censor anything. And then, interestingly enough, that disarms it. That gives it the attention it wants. Why do children throw tantrums? Because they want attention that they're not getting. If you give it that attention and love, like, don't be like, why are you being a trasher right now? That's the last thing it needs. The only thing it needs in that moment is love. And that's why I love the idea of self-love. This also comes back to self-love. In that moment, compassionately and lovingly tell yourself, okay, all right, you're hungry and you're dissatisfied and you're not happy right now. How can I help you? How can I serve you right now? And in asking it that question, you've already done 90% of the work of going back into creator mode.
Fantastic. So really the core is just to build that habit and that personal custom of catching it. It's that saying, isn't it? The best time to teach a dog to stop barking, it's when it's barking. Yeah. So it's the same thing with our inner critic and our inner trasher is that don't wait till the end of the day when you've realized you've had an afternoon of just berating yourself and whatever. Catch it in the moment. Give yourself the time and space to take a step back, acknowledge it. Don't indulge it. I think there's a but difference there, isn't it? It's indulging it and being empathic and, you know, expressing empathy towards it. There's a sort of difference in that. Fantastic. Okay. God, that's amazing. So Hoda, what impact, I will ask this question to everybody I speak to on these interviews. What impact, if you could capture it in a sentence, what impact do you want to leave in the world?
Yeah, that's an easy question to answer. I would like to bring as many people as my life, the length of my life will allow me to healing into leadership. So going from healing into becoming your very best. And because I see the crown on your head even when you don't see it. And if I have been through some tests and trials in my life where I was immensely patient, and I believe that and I still believed in the people that were abusing me. So if I went through that was my best training, to see people and see the crown on their head and believe in them nonstop and patiently, and believe in them into also joining in on the belief in themselves, into doing what they are meant to do.
It's a lovely way to define coaching, isn't it? It's the role ultimately, not just of coach. I think, to be honest with you, particularly today, again, with all this external chaos going on outside, I think everybody has a role, whether it's in your families or within your social groups or your wider communities. I think everybody has a role to stand in that place between the people we care about, between where they are and what they want, and remain immovable and see that possibility and guide them and just be there for them. And I think one of the positive that's starting to emerge out of this whole period of chaos, and I think this it comes back to this piece around Agents of Calm, isn't it? That this whole project is inspired by that Hawaiian proverb that suggests that there will come a time on the planet where there is so much chaos and so much change that many will have to arise of agents of calm. And for me, I first heard that in 2008, and it just flipped my world on its axis then. But I think the relevance of that and the resonance of that has got stronger and stronger and stronger. I think we're now in a point in time for most people across the entire world where it's incredibly important that we adopt that posture and that we are an agent of calm for people around us. And it starts by helping them find that clarity, bringing that balance, and in the process, expanding their sort of level of consciousness that they can go on and be a light for other people as well. But fundamentally, to your point, I love that, seeing the crown on everybody unconditionally, and believing and knowing what's possible for them, and staying there until they can do the same and they're ready to move forward. So I love that. And how would I recognize a Hoda inspired soul? So how would I recognize somebody? What's your hallmark that you like to leave on people? If I sort of met someone when you work with Hoda, well, what kind of characteristics do you think that they would express?
So after going through a transformational journey with me, this person would be unshakably confident, autonomous, and reliable, showing up as their best self consistently, and unafraid. Perhaps afraid here and there, but knowing, like, they know how to deal with their stuff. This person knows themselves. This person knows does not shirk from responsibility and does not shrink from showing up. This person, no matter what, even if painfully introverted, knows how to show up in the world and say, here I am, and this is what I stand for, and this is what I'm doing in the world.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So finally, let me thank you for your time. I'm really looking forward to this, and it's been amazing to chat to you. But just as a last question, how would people, more practically speaking, how can people get more of you, your work, your teachings, your ideas, and perhaps more importantly, how may they reach out and contact you if they're curious about working with you, with your coaching and your healing work?
Well, thank you for that question. They can find me through, they can find my programs on falva.teachable.com. So I'm available on Teachable, the programs. They can dive deeper into my work on my website, falva.de.
So it's PHAVLA.de. Okay.
PHALVA.
PHAV. Spell that again for me.
PHALVA. So.
Okay. Like that.
And I go live on Facebook and Instagram once a week each, so twice a week.
Okay.
I share my videos. Yeah, so I can be found on every platform.
Excellent. Okay. And before we wrap up, anything else that you'd like to share with anybody listening, either now, and I've had a few people on live. I haven't, unfortunately, the system that I work with means I can't see people on the live or who's commenting, which is a bit frustrating. I need to change that. But is there anything that you want to say to anyone now watching on the replay or later on when we put it on the podcast?
I'm sure that a lot of people will catch this on replay later on, so it's all good. Yeah, sure. I will leave you with one thing. Fear is a very natural and normal part of this brain, this nugget of gold between your ears. It's in there, but it's in there as something for you to use as a contrast to do the opposite of what your fear is telling you. I always say fear is a liar, and fear lies to you about who you are and what you can and can't do. You can do anything and everything. You are divine. You are a carrier of the divine, and you are meant to do great things. The only thing that holds you back from fully blooming into that is fear, and fear is a liar. So.
A wonderful way to close a lovely conversation. Hoda, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
I'm sure we'll be seeing each other again later this week in our little gang. Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon. And to everybody that's watched on the live, thank you for dropping by. Honestly, we'd love to know what you thought about this. Hoda has dropped so much gold and so many wisdom bombs on this. It's going to take me a while to capture them all. And if you're watching on the replay, thank you so much for stopping by. This will be posted in a couple of days on the podcast, and I will release it more formally then. Hoda, have a great afternoon, and thank you very much.
My pleasure and my honor to be a part of this. Thank you.
See you soon. Bye now.
Bye.